Gido Yuat, it's Wednesday, May 25th. This is Africa 54.
U.S. President Joe Biden vows to take action to reform gun laws after at least 19 children and 2 teachers are killed in a Texas school shooting. Tens of millions are experiencing extreme hunger in Ethiopia, Somalia, and Kenya, with the most vulnerable at the highest risk. And what can be done to stem the tide of wartime rape? We'll hear from Nobel Laureate Dr. Denis Mukwege.
We begin in the U.S. state of Texas, where once again, America is mourning the victims of a mass school shooting. And again, many people are asking why. A visibly angry and upset President Joe Biden is vowing to push legislators to take action to reform gun laws. VOA's Anita Powell has more on the school shooting.
President Joe Biden vowed Tuesday night to take meaningful action toward common sense gun laws, taking aim specifically at high-powered assault rifles, after a teenage shooter slaughtered at least 18 young children at a South Texas elementary school.
The idea that an 18-year-old kid can walk into a gun store and buy 2 assault weapons is just wrong. What in God's name do you need an assault weapon for except to kill someone? Deer aren't running through the forest with Kevlar vests on, for God's sake. It's just sick. And the gun manufacturers have spent 2 decades aggressively marketing assault weapons, which make them the most and largest profit. For God's sake, we have to have the courage to stand up to the industry.
Authorities said at least 18 children and 1 teacher were among the dead on Tuesday night after the midday attack at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. Biden also sent his condolences to families.
To lose a child is like having a piece of your soul ripped away. There's a hollowness in your chest. You feel like you're being sucked into it and never going to be able to get out. Suffocating. And it's never quite the same.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a Republican, said the shooter was an 18-year-old Uvalde resident. Abbott said the shooter was likely killed by responding officers.
I want to tell you that what happened in Uvalde is a horrific tragedy that cannot be tolerated in the state of Texas. And there is swift action being taken by local law enforcement as well as the Texas Department of Public Safety. They obviously now know who the shooter was, and the shooter is no longer alive.
In Washington, leaders from Biden's Democratic Party took the incident as a call to action to enact reforms that would prevent future shootings.
I'm here on this floor to beg, to literally get down on my hands and knees and beg my colleagues. Find a path forward here. Work with us to find a way to pass laws that make this less likely. I understand my Republican colleagues will not agree to everything that I may support, but there is a common denominator that we can find. There is a place where we can achieve agreement that may not guarantee that America never, ever again sees a mass shooting.
Texas prides itself on its spirited defense of the right to bear arms. Residents often claim, incorrectly, that it is the only state allowed to fly its flag at the same height as the U.S. flag. On Tuesday night, Biden ordered the national flag to be lowered to half-staff at the White House and at all public buildings and grounds. Anita Powell, VOA News, Washington.
For more on the Texas school shooting and the U.S. gun debate, let's go live via Skype to VOA Scott Stearns, who is standing by in Uvalde, Texas. Scott, you are at the Robb Elementary School. What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Esther, unfortunately, the death toll rose overnight after Anita had filed her piece. So the death toll is now 19 children and 2 adults. killed by that gunman here at Robb Elementary after he used that weapon to shoot his grandmother and then drove a car here, it crashed and ran into the school. Eerily similar to the last biggest school shooting here in the United States, the Sandy Hook massacre, in which that gunman also killed a family member before coming to that school.
Scott, the issue of gun control is big in the United States. It's also a divisive, situation here that we're looking at. What are you hearing when you listen to what President Biden had to say? What's the reaction from Texas?
You certainly heard the frustration from the president in his remarks last night. One of the problems with enacting gun reform in the United States is its constitutional provision. There was an assault weapons ban, which the president referenced as having been enacted when he was vice president. That was a different political environment. Given that we are months away from an off-year election in which the opposition party feels pretty confident, and given how difficult it has been for this president to get through Congress relatively less controversial things than gun control, as shocking as this has been, even to a Republican governor and the Republican members of the congressional delegation from Texas. It would surprise me if there was real gun reform between now and November.
And Scott, have you been able to speak with anybody at the school grounds today?
So this was to have been the last week of classes before school let out for the summer. Sadly, there are no students here at Robb Elementary attending class today. Instead, there are grief counselors and members of the FBI, the FBI counseling group with students, parents, and staff from this school and other schools in the district. All of those classes have been closed.
Scott, many thanks. VOA Scott Stearns reporting live via Skype from Uvalde, Texas. Global reaction to the Texas mass murders has been swift. Pope Francis says he is heartbroken by the school shooting in Texas that killed at least 19 children and 2 teachers on Wednesday. He called for greater controls on weapons in the United States.
My heart aches for the massacre at the primary school in Texas. I pray for the children, for the adults killed and their families. It's time to say enough to indiscriminate arms trafficking.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres was deeply shocked and saddened by the heinous mass shooting in an elementary school in Texas, according to his spokesman. In a statement, Stefan Dujarric said, quote, "It is particularly heart-wrenching that most of the victims are children." The Secretary General extends his heartfelt condolences to the families and loved ones of the victims and to the entire community. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Wednesday also offered his condolences to the relatives of the victims who were shot and killed in Texas. He said, quote, "Our thoughts are with all those affected by this horrific act." Across Africa, people are expressing dismay at the Texas school shootings. In Nigeria, reporter Timothy Obiezu spoke to some parents in the city.
As a parent, it's quite devastating and very sad indeed. It also shows the decadence of the society, and it behoves us, especially those of us who are concerned with school administration, to be very careful.
My kid is still 6 months, but I'm even afraid of enrolling her into a school or letting her out of my sight because I don't know what can happen, and this is rather unfortunate. The kids or children are supposed to be protected.
When we bully children in schools, it has a lot of effect on them, of which we know psychological effects. It can affect them negatively such that they can even think of committing suicide or not acceptable in the society. A gun control measure should be put in place in which authorities will be consulted before a child can handle gun.
Nigerian parents there speaking to VOA from Abuja. A recent report by Oxfam and Save the Children reveals that more than 23 million people are experiencing extreme hunger in Ethiopia, Somalia and Kenya. Conflict, the COVID-19 pandemic and the region's worst drought in 40 years are being blamed. Plus, the war in Ukraine has sent food prices soaring to unprecedented levels. Clara Frank has more.
Hacked-off thorn branches encircle two mounds of earth heaped over the tiny bodies of Halima Hassan Abdullahi's twin granddaughters. Babies Ebla and Abdia lived only a day. Weakened by hunger, their mother gave birth to the twins a month early, 8 weeks after their exhausted family walked into a camp for displaced families in the Somali town of Dolo. The remaining family are among more than 6 million Somalis who need aid to survive. After rains failed for 4 consecutive seasons, the worst drought in 40 years has shriveled their beans and maize and dotted scrubland with the corpses of their goats and donkeys. As global attention and funding focus on Ukraine, aid agencies and the United Nations are desperate to attract attention to a calamity they say is shaping up to be comparable to Somalia's 2011 famine. More than 250,000 people died then, mostly children under 5. There is only enough cash to provide aid for about half of the 13,000 people who have flooded into the Kahare camp that sprang up in January, one of 3 around Dolo. Abdullahi's family is not one of the lucky ones. She has not seen anything like it since the early 1990s, when a famine prompted a disastrous U.S. military intervention in Somalia that ended notoriously with the shooting down of a Black Hawk helicopter. On good days, Abdullahi can support the 13 members of her family by washing clothes in town, earning about $1.50. That enables everyone to have a single handful of maize porridge. But it is not enough. Her daughter-in-law needs medicine for typhoid that costs 10 times Abdullahi's daily wages. The girl lies listlessly on a blanket, a skinny baby fretting at her breast. The United Nations says early intervention is crucial to staving off the famine looming over 6 areas of Somalia. Getting food out fast meant that a drought in 2017, worse than the one that caused the 2011 famine, cost under 1,000 lives. But speed needs cash, and there isn't any. The UN plan to provide emergency aid is only 15% funded. So far, 2.8 million people have received aid. Another 3.1 million could be helped if more money came in. The rest are out of reach, residing in the bleak hinterlands where an Islamist insurgency holds sway.
We need the cash to avert the risk of famine.
Around the camp, people stretch orange tarpaulins and scraps of cloth and plastic over domes of sticks. They bury the dead wherever they can, sometimes marking graves with branches. As people crowd in from the countryside, they cluster around tents where aid staff tell them there is no help for now. Instead, many families end up begging a cup of food or a few pennies from those barely better off, but who arrived early enough to register for help. Clara Frank, VOA News.
We'd like to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, the Basketball Africa League resumes action in Kigali. We'll have a live report. Stay with us.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, my conversation with Nobel Peace Prize laureate Dr. Denis Mukwege. He'll talk about his new book, his work helping women caught in armed conflict, and his global campaign to end rape as a weapon of war. We'll also look at the impact of the abortion debate in the United States on countries in Africa and other parts of the world. We'll discuss why terminating pregnancies is not permitted for any reason in 10 out of 54 countries in Africa. Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
World-renowned gynecologist and Nobel Prize laureate Dr. Denis Mukwege says stories and allegations of wartime rape coming out of Ukraine resemble those in Ethiopia's Tigray region and his home country of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Mukwege runs the Panzi Hospital and Foundation, which he founded in his childhood hometown of Bukavu in eastern DRC. He and his team have treated tens of thousands of survivors of sexual violence. Mukwege is touring the United States to promote his memoir, which brings attention to his work treating women with injuries and trauma from wartime rape. Hedy Adams, host of Straight Talk Africa, recently spoke to Dr. Mukwege about his work in his new book.
This book is the result of my 25 years working with women in a conflict area in the Republic Democratic of Congo in Panzi Hospital. And what I could witness with in treating women is really that women are strong. And I can see that the resilience of women is really out of all the things that we can imagine. When I receive them after to be raped with extreme violence, and when I say extreme violence, it means that some of them are coming at the hospital with all their genitals destroyed. They have wounded in a very, very bad way. But when women stand up after to be treated, they didn't stand for themselves. They are standing for them and for their children, for the family. And for me, this is really wonderful if the society can't protect them, but when they got healing and stand up, they stand up and raise their voice for all the community. This for me is wonderful, and I think that I just feel that I should really do a testimony about my journey and show how women are strong, even if sometimes our system and patriarchal system want just to silence them.
Dr. Mukwege, when you hear stories and allegations of sexual violence against women during a time of conflict coming out of places like Ethiopia's Tigray region or Ukraine, what is your message to the international community about listening to those voices and those stories early on?
Before this war, that started in February, our team was already in contact with women in Donbass who were raped in 2014 when Russia invaded for the first time Ukraine. So what happened in Ukraine now, it happened some years ago, and our team were already in contact with women of Ukraine. I'm so touched to see that the international community can react very fast and put all the means. It's really how the international community should react in each conflict, because the suffering is universal. And the reaction against this suffering, or to take care of the suffering people, should be also universal. And I think that the case of Ukraine shows us that when there is a willing, we have capacity to stop atrocities. And this is a good example to say we can do the same in Ethiopia. We can do the same in Yemen, in Democratic Republic of Congo, and everywhere, just to think that we are sharing the same humanity. And when something like that, someone just decide to make another people, put another people in suffering, we have to react and stop it.
That was Hedy Adams speaking with Dr. Denis Mukwege. You can watch the whole interview coming up on Straight Talk Africa in 90 minutes. And it's time now for our tech segment. And joining us now is our technology reporter, Paul Ndiho. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Esther. Kenyan sisters Linda and Faith are making their mark in the innovation space. Their award-winning automated teller machine, ATM, dubbed Dial-A-Pad, dispenses sanitary pads at a low cost. making pads accessible to school-going girls. Could this innovation be a game changer? I spoke to Faith Mutindi, co-founder of Dial a Pad, based in Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
The last time I met you, you had a concept idea. You're trying to make pads for young girls in schools, and you've since grown into a legitimate business. Your pads are selling across the board. You're reaching out to women of all ages. Bring me up to speed.
From concept is proving the concept, and that's done by prototyping, and that's what you saw in Innovation Week. And then now we went on ahead and piloted in Bungoma in a few schools. Came 2020, COVID hits. We decided to pivot. We decided to diversify our portfolio. We decided to get more shares from the market, and we decided to enter into this private space, social space, where we install our dispensers and give access to women uninterruptedly to access their basic need and sort of cover the emergencies, as well as democratize this dignified access to school-going girls.
You've moved from a concept idea to a place where you are now comfortable. You are in shopping malls. You are in different parts of the country. How has the response been like?
So the response has been overwhelming, both from girls, women, and even investors. They've seen the need. It was a latent need. It was not openly spoken about, but we have covered this need that was to include women socially, even economically, and to provide uninterrupted education across for all 4 million school-going girls in Kenya.
When you talk to some of the girls that have benefited from your products, what are their stories? How has Dial Pad improved their well-being?
According to UNICEF, 7 out of 10 girls are missing up to a week in school of every month because of their menstruation. And so what this would mean is that they would drop out of school. So many of them are grateful because indeed they see it's beyond this part that I'm receiving. It's me having to sit in class for the entire 1 hour. It's
That's
me having
because
to
in
come
Zambia,
to
a labor law
for that
allows women
week
to stay
that
at
I
home once a month
couldn't have
during their
come.
period.
It's me
It was
having
passed
not
into
to
law in
beg, not having to
2015,
interact with
giving
border
Zambian women
riders.
unique rights
It's
in
me not
Africa.
having to exchange my body for this single piece of pad. So the response has been overwhelming in terms of the girls appreciating our efforts as the end consumer.
How many schools have you been able to reach?
Each pad dispenser is capable of holding up to 500 pads. So that's 10 schools, that's at least 5,000 girls whom we've impacted in this manner.
Where are you manufacturing these pads? Do you make them in Kenya?
We locally assemble. We have a young team, innovative minds, genuine minds. This is what we're using currently, the tools in our hands to manufacture and brand. Everything is locally made in Nairobi.
You and your sister trying to reach as many schools as possible. How about the issue of cost?
Cost, logistics is a big issue. And this is why today, actually, my sister and I were penning a letter to the president asking for assistance, really, of how we would roll out this program to reach the entire nation.
You brought up a very good point. I know President Uhuru Kenyatta has been at the forefront of that, pushing to see that every girl in school at least has access to these pads. If you were to speak to him directly, what is it that you would tell him?
So I would love to plead my cause on behalf of the girls. I thank you so much for the work you've done. You've been in the forefront globally. We are heading matters education. We cannot thank you enough for this. However, there are circumstances threatening to undermine the progress that we've had since we filed the bill into law, the education bill into law, and which stated that we needed to provide sanitary well materials to our girls, all school-going girls. So, currently we have issues that the kitty, the budget is slashed by the day. Our schools are yet open, and there is no continuity of this program. I would kindly ask for you to check into that for our girls.
Thank you so much for your insight. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Faith Mutindi is the co-founder of Dial EPAD based in Nairobi, Kenya. And that's our Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
Paul, thanks. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho every Wednesday for the latest technology news. Now, the Basketball Africa League returns to play Wednesday, and joining us live from Kigali, Rwanda, with the latest news is VOA's Eddie Rwema. Hello, Eddie. Tell us what the preparations look like for tonight's matches.
Hello, Esther. Hello, Africa 54 viewers. We are just outside the Kigali Arena. The first game of the semi-finals is currently underway, and the first half just ended with Petro do Luanda of Angola leading FAP of Cameroon by 46 points to 35. This is the first game of the day, and then later on, the Giants of Africa, that's Zamalek from Egypt, will be playing US Monastir of Tunisia. We remind our viewers that these two teams, this is going to be a rematch for them since the 2021 when they met at the finals of the first edition of the Basketball Africa League.
Eddie, what's going to be the takeaway, most memorable thing about the BL in Kigali when the players leave the country?
I think it's the excitement that the game brings to the city, the excitement that it brings to the country itself. This is the second time that Rwanda is hosting the Basketball Africa League, but this time it's the first time that the arena is full with fans and basketball enthusiasts watching the games. It's also a way of inspiring young and upcoming Rwandan basketball players, not only in Rwanda, but also on the entire African continent. So there's a lot to take away from this tournament. There's been a lot of very good players that young players would wish to be like.
Eddie, thanks. Enjoy it while you're there. Eddie Rwema is a VOA Central Africa reporter reporting live for us from Kigali. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.